thought there was no way out. Yeah, I used to be scared of the light, and I was swallowed by doubt. I'd forgotten what freedom was like. Puzzle pieces on the floor, they don't fit in anymore. I'm changing, I'm changing. When they ask you who I am, what I've done and where I've been, there's one thing I want you to say. Tell 'em I'm brave, see it on my face. I am bigger than anything coming my way. It's a new day, now I'm not afraid. So if anyone asks you how I overcame
Hello, my name is Tanja Miles, and I am a military vet. I served in the Louisiana Army National Guard for 9 years as a military police. When I was a little girl, my dad trained me to fight while wounded. Fast forward to my years of being a military police in the Louisiana Army National Guard, and the military trained me to fight while wounded. That's one of the things that you're taught in basic training. This has helped me a lot on my journey through life because when I was 7 years old, I was molested. The first time I tried to kill myself, I was 13. The next time I tried to kill myself, I was between 19 and 18, and I ended up in a mental hospital. I was always told, Tanja, you're tough. You have purpose, you're resilient, but you also need to suck it up. And so I basically lived my life of all this shame and this hurt and all this trauma just being tough. And so my dad was in the military, and so was uh, my grandfathers. And so my dad kind of trained me as if I was always in boot camp. So when I went in the military, it was easy for me in basic training. Matter of fact, I love basic training. I loved AIT. I loved everything about being a soldier. I love the camaraderie. I love the teamwork. I love the being able to be mission minded. I love serving my country. I love it still to this day, and that's why I'm so grateful that I get to help vets. I have PTSD. My PTSD did not come from being in the military. It came from a lot of sexual trauma, not only as a child, but as an adult, and also a lot of sexual trauma while I was in the military. Um, when I first joined the military, it wasn't to serve my country, it was a way for me to get college tuition. But because I came from a family of service, it was easy for me once I got in the military to realize the importance of sacrifice and duty and honor and respect. But still, I was doing all these amazing things as a soldier. I was thriving as a soldier, but no one saw the hurt, the shame, the guilt, the condemnation. No one saw the trauma. No one knew about the drug addiction. No one knew about the sex addiction. No one knew that I hated the skin that I was in. Nobody knew that I would be more than happy to protect and serve someone else. But the person that I could not protect and serve was the 7-year-old Tanja. And I punished myself that I could not protect her from that violent act, the first one, and then the rapes, and then all the other stuff. When I got in the military, it was a silent place for me. But the sexual trauma did not stop there. Matter of fact, I ended up getting pregnant for a drill sergeant. I was sent back home to have an abortion, and it was really challenging for me. But at the end of the day, I still love being a soldier. At the end of the day, I still love serving my country. But with all of this trauma and all of this stuff that was still bothered on the inside of me, I knew I needed to get help. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that what I had was PTSD. It wasn't until years later that I realized that me trying to kill myself 3 times and ending up in a mental hospital 3 times was all because of the sexual trauma, all because I thought it was my fault, all because I could not protect, the little girl. And so I lived my life dying. I live my life not wanting to be around, but I also live my life wanting to protect other people. And that's why I did so well while I was in the military. Today, I still serve my country, but it's more on a community basis. I still work with vets every day, particularly who have PTSD like me. We know that vets, we are dying by suicide at a high rate. So every day I wake up on a mission to push hope, to let other veterans know that there's help, that there's hope, that you're not alone, that there's a team of people like us, like me, that want to see you still be here, that we know that you have that can-do spirit. We know that you want to do great things to serve your country and the community. But at the end of the day, as vets, the best service that we can do is within ourselves. And that's why I wake up every day to push hope. That's why I wake up every day and I talk about my lived experience. I talk about how I went from the crack house to the White House. I talk about the rapes. I talk about all the trauma and the drama to let people know that if I can do it, that they can do it. And that if you're a veteran out there, I know that you have that can do spirit. And I know sometimes it's hard, but you can do it, and that you're not alone, and that there's other vets like me and so many others who are here for you. And that's why we share our story. That's why we share our lived experience, because we want you to be around for better days, because better days are coming and you're not by yourself. We are a team, and we will get through this together. We will eradicate suicide among vets. We will wake up every day and say, you know what? Your life matters. And we are grateful that you serve this country. But at the end of the day, the best service that you can do is on yourself. My name is Tanja Miles, Sergeant, United States Army Military Police, and this is my brave.
Hi, my name is Elias Munoz, 13-year Army veteran, born and raised in Los Angeles, California. Joined the Army in 2000 with the 101st Airborne Division, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Became a drill sergeant in 2006, Fort Benning, Georgia. And throughout the rest of my military career, I was at Fort Lewis, Washington, 4th Stryker Brigade Combat Team. And got out in 2013. As far back as I could remember, I was never comfortable in my own skin. Growing up, I wasn't allowed to really show emotion. We didn't do that in the household, talking about feelings, things of that nature. So I grew up holding a lot in, building a lot of resentment. With that, I always felt compelled to have to escape or get out of my own skin, anything but not feel. And as I got older, I found ways to do that. Alcohol, substance abuse, that's part of my story. That was part of my escape. Throughout my teenage years, I lost my mom at the age of 19. During that time, I was battling myself in more ways than one. And of course, I felt like I had to get away and escape. So I ran away, which was part of my pattern and method to deal with challenges and adversity, right? And this time I ran away to the United States Army. So I spent 13 years in the Army. I had a great career there, a couple of combat deployments. Towards the end of those 13 years, things began to change for me. A lot of that built up resentment and things of the past that kept creeping up were starting to come out. And my cup was full, and I began overflowing on everybody I loved, including my family, my wife, my kids. It wasn't long before my ways affected them, and I ended up losing my family as a result. Of course, alcohol or substance abuse allowed me to escape from that reality and at the same time exasperate everything that I was going through. After the end of 13 years, I got out of the military, and that's when I began to really feel alone. Through that process, I got to reflect on a lot of the resentment, anger, fear. I was going through a lot of emotions, and I didn't really know how to deal with them. And it got to the point where I began to compensate even harder, whether it was alcohol or substance abuse or whatnot, and things just became worse. My paranoia was out of control, wouldn't let me sleep. My anger made me burn every bridge I had, including ties with family members and loved ones, till I pushed everybody away. And I think the self-destruction mode I was in, that's exactly what I was trying to shoot for. And I ended up in that very lonely place. And one of my darkest moments I can remember sitting on the couch. I was hopeless, helpless, extremely lonely. And I was contemplating whether I even wanted to go on, whether I even wanted to live anymore. I was kind of angry at the fact that I didn't have what it took. I wasn't as hard as I should have been. I'm falling apart. Why couldn't I put myself back together with my own hands? I didn't understand why I was so weak. And that's how I looked at things. And during that dark moment, I was contemplating whether or not I wanted to live or not. And I remember looking down at a picture, and I'm looking at my son's picture. And while I'm trying to decide that fact, I kept looking at him, and I was wondering what he would think if I checked out. How weak would that be if I checked out on him? With no reason, no message other than Dad gave up. I knew there was another way. I had fellow veterans who been in similar situations and paid the ultimate price. Unfortunately, I called the Veterans Crisis Line. And when I called the Veterans Crisis Line, there was somebody on the other line who happened to be a veteran, who was the same MOS as I was and understood everything I had to say. He had a funny way about getting it out of me, but when he did, he stood on the phone with me and he guided me to a safe place, guided me back to the VA hospital, to where I was safe, coordinated with the medical staff there. And once they received me, they gave me the physical care I needed at the moment. I was put in touch with mental health resources, and I started a whole mental health process there, which, come to find out, were many veterans that were there just like me. I wasn't alone. And that was the greatest feeling in the world. One of the hardest things to do, and that took the most amount of courage, I believe, was just to pick up that phone. It was like 1,000-pound phone. I don't know why I could just never reach out for help. I could never accept defeat. I could never admit defeat. And I felt defeated. Come to find out, by reaching out, asking for help, there was a whole support system out there, whether it was medical staff, fellow veterans, even family members started coming around when I started to seek help and self-improvement and deal with me. Because overall, I definitely had to take accountability for who I was and where I was going. And fortunately, I was able to be put into substance abuse treatment as well. And that is a part of my story. I wasn't able to get the mental health I needed until I dealt with that fact, right? With running away and substance abuse. And, I had to be in my own skin, and I had to feel. And I realized it is okay to feel, and it is okay to feel sad, and it is okay to feel angry. Today I don't have to let it control my life anymore. And I learned resources and got assistance to help get through those tough times. And one of the greatest blessings I got out of asking for help is not only improving my quality of life. Sure, it's work every day. It's a process. Takes hard work and commitment. But I think being here for another veteran or anyone in general who needs help when it comes to mental health or having a crisis, just being here and being able to give that back and give some support back to let you know that you're not alone. You're not alone. We're here. There's thousands of us out here, and there's a support system that can be here for you too. All you have to do is have the courage to pick up that phone, reach out, call somebody, talk to somebody, let somebody know. I encourage you to do that because there is a solution. And today I don't have to live like that anymore. And again, I'm Elias Munoz, and this is My Brave.
My name is Bethany Ryan, and I served in the U.S. Army from 2003 to 2009. I walked into a forest on the 20th of May. I followed a path into the woods and planned to die that day. I took the path to the left and followed to a downed tree, and then off the traveled path I went to set my spirit free. But my spirit didn't die that day. My heart fought to stay alive. So here I am on that path again, 5 years after I survived. While on this path, I realized that the forest here has changed. Erosion storms, rain, and growth have made this place feel strange. I smile as I realize that I've changed so much as well. My heart is full of gratitude for the story of hope I have to tell. I wrote this poem while visiting the location of my attempted suicide on the 5th anniversary of my survival. I've decided to share that story of hope with you tonight. When I got out of the Army in 2009, everything seemed fine. I experienced rounds of depression, but chalked it up to normal life stress. After a few years, I realized things were at a point where I should probably seek some help. However, I was the main provider for my 2 children and held a high-level security clearance. I feared losing my job if I sought help. I continued to hold everything in until 2014 when the internal box of trauma exploded. I experienced a severe mental health crisis. I was hospitalized 12 times in 2 years. I had several suicidal thoughts, gestures, and non-lethal attempts. However, on May 20th, 2016, I made an attempt that was almost fatal. I had reached a place where I felt I had lost almost everything. I had lost my marriage due to my illness. Our divorce had been finalized earlier that month. Due to my instability, my husband received custody of our 2 children. I was severely in debt and had not been able to work consistently due to my illness and had been living off credit cards. Eventually, the cards were full and I began getting denied for new ones. I felt it was the end for me. I had absolutely nothing left. The life I had worked so hard to build was gone. There wasn't a shred of hope it would get better. All the good things I had gotten to experience in life were over. All that was left was pain. So I walked into a forest and I attempted to die. While I had sought help at the VA hospital previously, it wasn't until after this attempt that a social worker explained that I qualified for compensation due to the injuries I sustained during my service. I thought VA benefits were only for soldiers that had lost limbs or sustained significant injuries during combat. While I had deployed to Iraq, my injuries did not occur there. Money doesn't fix everything, but the VA financial benefits helped to relieve the immense pressure I felt from being completely buried in debt. I was unable to pay basic living expenses. Getting VA compensation was as if someone had cut the rope to the center block that was holding me underwater. I got involved with therapy and made great progress with my mental health. However, even a year after my suicide attempt, I still felt lost. I didn't know who I was. Before my mental health crisis, I had been the overachiever that would hide everything under a smile. Now it seemed like I cracked under the slightest amount of pressure. I used to take pride in myself that I excelled at my job as a wife and as a mom. But now I was divorced, retired from my job due to disability, and it seemed impossible to excel at being a mom while battling depression. I felt that my mental health crisis had broken me into a million different pieces. And while they weren't scattered across the floor without hope anymore, they felt like a dysfunctional blob with pieces stuck in mismatched spots. When I described this feeling to one of my friends on social media, she explained the description of kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery using gold to bond the fractured pieces. It gave me hope that maybe someday these broken and dysfunctional pieces can become something beautiful. Through various programs and therapies I've attended the last several years, I've been able to continue healing and reconstructing the pieces. As I began to heal myself and the trauma inside, the external things in my life began to heal as well. I found that while some pieces were a total loss, such as my job, other pieces that I thought were gone forever were able to be restored. My ex-husband and I have reunited, and we live together with our children as a family again. Along the way, I've also found pieces that I didn't even know were missing. Dear friendships and experiences that were forged through the battle with mental illness and the struggle of recovery. Somehow all these pieces, the old ones, the new ones, the missing ones, and the restored ones, have come together to form this new yet familiar version of the me I've missed for so long. It's been 6.5 years now since that suicide attempt. I'm not cured. There are still gaps and cracks between my pieces. When something shatters like that, though, it's impossible to collect every single shard. With me tonight, I have Hero Dogs Fiona Hill. In September, I was partnered with her through an organization in the Washington, D.C. metro area called Hero Dogs. Fiona is trained to help me fill those cracks. She helps me to recognize when I'm stressed and might need to take a break, wakes me up during nightmares, and helps me to take medications on time. She hears me startle, she checks to make sure I'm okay. I know with her help, I can go even further in my recovery because it was the thought of having her by my side that gave me the courage to even consider speaking my story to an audience for the very first time. Stronger than yesterday is the stone I choose to place, reminding me of all the things I've been strong enough to face. And just as the forest changes, life doesn't stay the same. 5 years ago, I was a broken soul, but now look who I became. My name is Bethany, and this is my brave.
Semper Fidelis. My name is Gunnery Sergeant Gregory Jenkins, retired. I served in the United States Marine Corps from 1994 to 2015. I served in every climb and place, starting with basic training in San Diego, California, serving in North Carolina, and also in Okinawa, Japan. First, I want to start off by saying, happy birthday, Marines. 247 years of service to our great nation. I guess you're wondering, why am I here in this closet? Well, I want to speak to many of my brothers and sisters that are out there right now. See, I found myself in the same position in a closet as many of us do. In the closet, you can see many things. You see the different hats that we may wear. You see the different clothes that we may put on just to cover up and blend in with our society. But one thing that I found in a turning point in my life was after I left the Marine Corps, after retirement, and it was read to me these words: Certificate of Appreciation for service in the Armed Forces of the United States of America, Gunnery Sergeant Gregory D. Jenkins, USMC. I extend to you my personal thanks and the sincere appreciation of a grateful nation for your contribution of honorable service to our country. You have helped maintain the security of the nation during a critical time in its history, which is devoted to duty and spirit of sacrifice in keeping with the proud traditions of military service. Your commitment and dedication have been inspirations for those who will follow in your footsteps. And for all Americans who join me today in saluting you for a job extremely well done. My best wishes to you and for happiness and success in the future. Barack Obama, Commander-in-Chief. These words, the closing of one chapter entering into a new chapter, it had me feeling proud in one way, but feeling anxious, depressed in another way. I found myself landing a wonderful job, I thought, working for a company in the oil and gas industry. They were flying me all over the country to go into different projects, exercising the leadership skills and giving back all the things that were poured into me while I was in the service. Then one day came that there was a time to lay people off. And in this time of laying people off, my number was called. The military prepared me for so many things. And no matter what job I had in the Marine Corps, whether I was in combat, whether I was patrolling, whether I was back in garrison, I was always a United States Marine. But I found myself in this closet. I found myself trying to figure out, where do I go from here? They told me I couldn't go back to my desk, that I would be escorted out of this building, this high rise, this new chapter in my life, just to find myself wondering, did I make a difference? Well, I'm speaking to you right now, to all of you, no matter what branch of service you're in, If you are a veteran, if you've served our country, if you volunteered and you went to do something that many would ever have the opportunity to even go after, I'm speaking to you. We have so many people that have did great deeds and heard those same words that I read to you, but yet they find themselves compartmentalized, find themselves in a closet, find themselves trying to figure out what's next. Well, I want to let you know that just like Uncle Sam was recruiting you to come in and serve this great nation, we are recruiting you to let you know a few simple words are very important. Words that you value. You are valued. The words that you're still needed. So you may not suit up and may not put the same uniform on like you did when you was active. But today we need you to be suited up for your families, be suited up for your communities, to be suited up for this great nation. Those words of honor, courage, and commitment that was given to me while I served in the Marine Corps are still valued right now. And I don't know who exactly am I talking to right now, but I want you to know that it's important for you to not throw in the towel. I want you to know that it's important that you step out and realize that everything that you need is still there and that you are needed more now than ever. If you're dealing with bouts of depression, or even like me that have bouts of PTSD, I want you to know that there is help available. There is help that will be provided. They will put it up on the screen that you can dial into, because we need you. We need you to help build the nation after the service on the front lines, because now your front line has moved. It is closer to home. And I want you to know, if no one told you that you're valued, you're valued. If nobody told you that you're appreciated, you're appreciated. If no one told you that we're here with you and you're not alone, I'm here letting you know you're not alone. Because when I was in this closet, I had to get mad. I had to develop a new mindset. I had to develop a new attitude. I had to develop a new determination. And that determination is to let each and every last one of my fellow brothers and sisters here in the military, active, those retired, those veterans, those that are looking to make a difference, that you're needed. Happy birthday to the Marines for 247 years. Happy birthday to this nation of all armed forces. And let this be the time that we pick each other up. We don't throw in the towel. We use the services that are made available to us, and we go out and be the best that we can be. Let's take the things in our closet to remind us of what we need to do to continue to push forward for our great nation. My name is Gregory Jenkins, and this is My Brave.
When most think of a veteran, myself included, we tend to think of Grandpa who fought in World War II, or our uncle isolating himself in rural parts of America after serving in Vietnam. Tiffany is not what most of us would think of as an Army veteran. Like a lot of my fellow veterans, she experienced severe trauma during her service. The first time I met Tiffany was the same night she asked me if I would be her model to wear a dress completely made of paper. This dress. Before I met Tiffany, she had a general idea for her project, but it later evolved, and quite drastically at that. The stress was specifically and articulately designed to convey the story of many service members and veterans that live with post-traumatic stress, a red dog tag, or have experienced excruciating suffering which facilitated in taking their own lives, a black dog tag. This dress was her story. Receiving a phone call in the middle of the night from another veteran can be unnerving, especially when they tell you they've done all they can to help a veteran from choosing suicide. And hopefully a fellow female veteran will help her feel safe in this situation. I'd never been to this building. I've never met the person on the other side of that door. But what I did know is that she was a fellow veteran in the whirlwinds of a post-traumatic stress episode triggered a few days prior, which had escalated to suicidality. As I walked in, I noticed the apartment in total disarray. There were random objects scattered across the floor. The room permeated that familiar smell when we've been in the house for days on end and nothing is fresh. We know the one, the COVID lockdown smell. Everything felt lifeless, flat, stale. Looking around the room, there was a queen-size bed in the corner of the living room. Sitting on it were 5 people, facing the far corner where the bed met the converging walls of the room. Tiffany was sitting in the corner, cowering as everyone huddled around her to show support and care with desperate intention. She looked like a wounded animal, and terrified, trapped. I told everyone to leave. After they left, it felt as if the entire apartment sighed with relief. Tiffany visibly relaxed. The external threat had finally left. Good intentions, all of them, but there was something missing in their delivery. Sitting down gently on the edge, asking if it was okay for me to do so, I started with the basics. My name is Sarah. Can you tell me your name? Tiffany? Can you tell me the last time you ate? I think I ate something this morning. No, last night. What about water? Are you drinking any water? Oh, I have a cup here. Are there any medications you're required to take? Yeah, I just took them. I went through these and other questions that made her feel human, connect to her body, and really check in with herself. As she continued to relax, we were able to talk about why I was asked to come. Her world was imploding, and she was feeling very suicidal for the last few days, and it just got worse as time went on. When all of her friends arrived, they were ill-prepared on how to provide what she needed in that moment. Good intention, nonetheless. We talked for a little while about where she was at mentally and emotionally. She softened as our conversation progressed and revealed more about her trauma, what triggered it, how she chose to cope, which none of it was working. So she called our mutual friend over to help. Tiffany was not seeking anything except emotional connection and presence. She required pure, radical acceptance for how shitty she was feeling, not to be convinced to stay in this world because it would make someone else feel sad or hurt by losing her. She needed someone to just sit and be with her, right next to her in all of her shittiness, shame, self-loathing, and suffering. Sharing those moments of acceptance and connection, supporting her to the other side of those intense and horrible emotions, that was the beginning of true healing. Presence was all that was necessary. Collectively, there has been a trend to use the term mental health as an all-encompassing term of self-care, despite what we are choosing to do for ourselves. Ordering our triple grande vodka Xanax latte to go, declaring vehemently that we really needed this because it's been a stressful day and it's really good for my mental health. What is really happening is that we are so disconnected from ourselves and any suffering we might be experiencing. Suffering that escalates from a space of discomfort or disease and then turning into disease. We numb it, we ignore it, it evolves into something bigger. The stories we tell ourselves about our experience perpetuate further suffering. We all have them. The ugly, dark little lies we tell ourselves to keep us from truly being happy or whole. We obsess about it. We become it. Because we have told ourselves how true it is. Then we hate ourselves for it. At certain moments, that suffering pushes some of us right up to the edge. Right up to the edge of our own existence, with the awareness of only having one way out. Many of us here have lived through that moment or seen that moment in others. Some not surviving that moment at all. But this was not the case for Tiffany. Not today. Today was going to be her alive day, where she gets a new moment to start over. Back at the apartment with Tiffany, we started to laugh and connect more. I knew she needed to get out of the house after 3 darkly isolated days. A select few of us went to a late night coffee shop, connecting, talking, and taking a deep breath of relief. Tiffany was safe. Tiffany was getting excited, animated, and more present, talking about her future and plans with her fashion design program at the Art Institute of Colorado. Turning to me suddenly, Tiffany asked, "Sarah, do you want to be my model for the paper fashion show?" 5 months later, after that night, I was literally being superglued into a green woven paper corset, slipping on my own black Army combat boots, and proudly, yet somberly, walking down the runway, wearing hundreds of paper dog tags that represented stories of veterans and service members a moment away from or just after the worst moment of their lives. Tiffany was not being represented by a black dog tag. Today, Tiffany is very much alive and living her life more fully after the darkest moments she had ever experienced. As most people, she lives life receiving some bumps and bruises along the way, but she is so very much alive. I, for one, am so grateful that she is. The legacy of her story, our story, all our veterans and service member stories is on permanent display at the Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center in Aurora, Colorado, reminding veterans they're never alone and we can always rely on the strength and support of our collective camouflage corset. I'm Sarah Alder, and this is Our Brave.
I was in my darkest moment when Sarah showed up. I was overwhelmed with 2 jobs, full-time school, a failure to talk about my military sexual trauma that has destroyed my self-worth and mental ability to accept love from anyone, and the multiple failures of my life up to that point. I couldn't stand myself as a human and did not see how anyone could want to be around me. The litany of self-hate that I kept telling myself, that I was ugly, I was a sham of a human, that I was unlovable, that no one would want damaged goods, that people secretly hated me, that I was never good enough, was a constant drumming in my head. Before Sarah showed up, I had been in the bath, scissors inches away from my wrist, just telling myself, do it, just end it, and you won't hurt anymore. You won't have to relive the rape in your head. You won't fail people anymore. The one thing that stayed my hand was my cat. She chose that moment to try to get my attention. That pulled me back enough to realize I needed help. I called a girlfriend of mine and she called others. All of a sudden, I had about 5 people surrounding me. The people that had been surrounding me at the time was too much stimulus, and I couldn't accept the help they so desperately tried to give me. I'm so glad Sarah knew to get me separated long enough to breathe again. Talking to her and slowly coming back to reality made sure that I wasn't actually alone like I felt. I'm so glad Sarah became my model for the paper dress. It gave me a future point to focus on, and I knew the stress would mean a lot to so many others. After that dark night, I finally started getting seen by docs. I got treated for PTSD, MST, bipolar, depression, and anxiety. Eventually, we found the right mix of meds, and I learned that to get better, I had to dig into the darkest parts and acknowledge them. I had to look at that broken woman and tell her that it's okay to not be okay, but that I have to keep trying because good things are coming. My therapists have been the cornerstone of my recovery. I could not ask for a better team to help me relearn to love myself and how to grieve for the lost self in a healthy way. Art has also helped me move forward. Doing the dark pieces for myself led to some beautiful pieces later on. That paper dress helped me show other veterans that you're not alone. We can get through it together. It brought to life for people the reality of those dark days winning. I wanted that dress to be a symbol of hope, that you can find a kindred heart to lean on and make something beautiful. Those dark days might come back, but don't let them win. Never let them win, because there is so much beauty to behold.
Hello, my name is Ernie Mariscal. I was a Sergeant First Class in the United States Army. I served 21 years. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. I believe sharing my story not only helps others heal, but it lets others know that they're not alone in this fight we call life. In life, we're sometimes not going to have the answers to life. Life is not fair. Life is not perfect. We're not perfect, and that's okay. But what's not okay is that we beat ourselves up every day for not being perfect. Failure is part of success. We should embrace failure because failure lets us know what we need to work on in life. And I found that the hard way. When I retired in 2012, after serving 21 years in the United States Army, and when I was on my way home, I figured people were going to be blowing up my phone, sending me emails, like banging on my front door, hiding in my closet, begging me to go work for them. I mean, why wouldn't they? I was responsible for millions upon millions of dollars of equipment. I was in charge of a 73-man platoon. But guess what? None of that happened. And when that didn't happen, I started questioning who I was. I started questioning my accomplishments. And worst of all, I started questioning my worth. And my days got darker, my depression got deeper, and my drinking got heavier. I started isolating myself from society and devaluing myself so much by talking negative to myself, and just became more depressed and worthless and felt worthless. And it got to a certain point where I just didn't want to live anymore. I wanted to end it all. And on that day, I got a phone call asking me if I would go speak at the local high school about my military career. At first, I wanted to say no, but something told me to say yes. And when I got to that classroom and I stood in front of those students, I felt a sense of belonging. I felt peace. And best of all, I felt worth. And after I told them my story, one student raised their hand and asked me, "What is a veteran?" And when I was asked that, I thought about my whole career, and I've worked with a lot of great men and women. But one story stood out. It was one cold morning, Fort Benning, Georgia, and we were getting ready to do physical training, which we call PT. And I was introduced to this new guy, Sergeant Chatham. Now, in the Army, when you get a new guy, you want to smoke him. And what that means is that he's either you make them throw up or pass out, but one of those is going down today. So I was like, how you doing, Sergeant Chatham? I'm Sergeant Marty Scott. Nice to meet you. We're going to go on about a 4 to 5 mile run. Now, I know you're probably not going to believe this, but I used to run a lot. It may not look like it now. So we start our run, and we're going at a good pace. Now, on our way back, I wanted to take them up this one obstacle that we call Cardiac Hill. And the reason it's named Cardiac Hill is because it's broken a lot of hearts. So me and Sergeant Chatham, we hit the bottom of Cardiac Hill. Boom, we just take off. And I can see him out of the corner of my eye, and we're both giving everything that we've got, because that's what you're supposed to do when you hit an obstacle in life. So we get to the top of Cardiac Hill, and we have about another quarter mile to go, and we end our run. And I look at Sergeant Chatham, and I ask him, hey, how you feeling, brother? And he goes, I'm feeling pretty good. It's just my leg bothering me a little bit. And when he said that, I got this big old smile on my face, because I figured I won this battle. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll meet you back at the motor pool, because that's where we both worked. We were both instructors at the time. So I get there first. I see Sergeant Chatham walk in. And as he's walking closer to me, I ask him again, how are you feeling? He says, I'm good. It's just my leg bothered me. And I still got this big old smile on my face. And then I ask him, hey, do you want me to go get some tissues or something? And, he laughs and then tells me to go do something with myself. And he sits right in front of me, and he leans over and starts lifting up his pant leg. With every inch of him lifting up that pant leg, that smile, that pride faded away. Sergeant Chatham had a prosthetic leg. I mean, he could have told me, hey, Sergeant Marty Scott, can you slow it down? I got a prosthetic leg. Hey, Sergeant Marty Scott, can you take it easy on me? Because I got a prosthetic leg. And then he tells me when his unit was in Iraq, his unit was ambushed, and an RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, penetrated his vehicle and blew his leg clean off. The first thing he tried to do was stand up. So he can go check on his men. And then he tells me he got sent to Germany, where he had to learn how to walk again. He had to learn how to be a father again and a husband again, doing all these things. And not once did he feel sorry for himself. So when somebody asks me what a veteran is, that's the story I tell them. Because, see, that's who we are. See, we adapt, we overcome. We attack our hill in life. And I understand we have some that get in the darkness, just as myself. But we need a purpose. We need a mission. And that's what I figured out. I was the purpose. I was the mission when I stood in front of those students. That's what inspired me to start investing in myself, to make myself better. Because when I make myself better, I create a better world, not only for myself, but for those around me. Because every day has opportunities. Every day has choices. Even though something goes wrong, you have a choice to keep fighting, because that's what life's all about, keeping up the fight. Because every day is a fight, and you are worth every minute of that fight. So I tell you, know your worth and keep fighting for your worth, because you are the one that makes the choice. So keep fighting, my brothers and sisters. My name is Ernie Marty Scott. Thank you so much for having me here. This is my brave.
I hope that you were inspired by what you saw tonight from our cast of storytellers. Tonight on this virtual platform, our storytellers were able to shine a light on a topic that we just don't talk enough about. And so I want to invite you now, if you will, in the chat, to be brave with us and our storytellers tonight, and to please add a comment. You can put a heart in there, or just a me too, but put something in there to if you yourself have ever lived with a mental health condition, or if you love someone who has. When we do this at our live show, we ask people to stand, and we tell them, we ask them people to stand for the same circumstances. And I can tell you that every time we do a live show, every single time, and we've had over 80, we have everyone in the audience standing by the time we get through that. It's really incredible and moving. And so I hope that our storytellers tonight feel the love from the audience and feel the sense that we really honor your stories tonight, and we appreciate your being brave, setting this example for your fellow veterans, letting them know that they're not alone if they're going through something. So thank you. I would like to also just remind you that if you were inspired by what you saw tonight and would like to make a donation to This Is My Brave, we're going to drop into the chat a link where you can do that. Also, if you'd like to keep up with This Is My Brave and see about future opportunities for shows or potentially for storytelling opportunities, we invite you at that to check out our website and subscribe to our newsletter, where you can learn about upcoming events and things that are going on with This Is My Brave and potential ways that you can be involved. So now I'd like to welcome to our chat this evening. This is the live portion of our event, and we have with us, first of all, we have Dr. Jan Laughinghouse, who is a mental health professional. She is the executive director of the Capital Area Human Services in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and has over 22 years of clinical experience and has worked extensively with veterans in her clinical care. So thank you, Dr. Jan, for being here with us. We appreciate your clinical advice for us tonight. And also joining me in the room, in the Zoom room here, is every one of our storytellers. And that includes Bethany, Elias, Ernie, Gregory, Sarah, Tiffany, and Tanja. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. So, wow, I hope that you will unmute and let's just talk freely. I hope we can all talk together now about what your reaction is to seeing everybody's pieces. I don't know that everybody has had a chance to hear from the other storytellers. So for some of you, you're hearing these stories for the very first time. So how are you guys feeling about having seen the show now?
So I'll go first. I mean, going first, I was really kind of apprehensive because I was going to have to sit through everybody's story and be traumatized by it. Let's just be 100. And but can I tell you, I wasn't traumatized. I was more encouraged. Just some of the things that some of my fellow brothers and sisters said was just really amazing. The one that stuck out the most was when the last brother said, "I am the mission." Because all of us are so mission minded on this call because we were trained to do that and we're passionate about that. But at the end of the day, we are the mission. And that's a whole preach right there. So that was
Nice.
great.
Yeah. I was actually really touched. I think a couple people talked about, it seems like in your space where you are, and that sometimes you can get lost in your head and stuck in negative thought process. And so I heard Ernie say it, and I heard Tiffany say it, that they needed to be pulled out of that space where they were stuck in that negative thought process. And it was something external that really was able to pull them out. For Tiffany, it was your cat, which I saw in the chat that somebody said that their dog had helped them out of a really dark place. So animals have a wonderful way of doing that. Bethany is showing us that tonight with her dog Fiona. But for Ernie, it was the phone call from the school asking him to do something as a veteran to come and be an example. And so, and Sarah, you talked about just knowing intuitively when you responded to Tiffany that you needed to get her back into a space where she was not lost in her thoughts and more present. So you had the thought to connect her to where she was and in her body and in the room? Like, what made you do that? Like, how did you know to do that?
Like I said in my story sharing, it was really just a matter of how can I make her just as present as I am. And I needed her there with me too, and I couldn't show up for her unless she was there and present. And so going with the fundamentals of basic human care and needs of when did you sleep, when did you eat, what are you drinking, are you, things like that. It just makes it simple and more tangible, which I think just makes it less intense to have to navigate. And to me, it was just intuitive in that moment. So I'm grateful that we were able to connect on that level and make something bigger and more impactful happen.
That's amazing. Dr. Jan, can you tell us a little bit clinically, if somebody finds themselves in that space where they're stuck in their head and it is, it's overwhelming, like how can somebody coach themselves out of that and back into the space that Sarah drew Tiffany into, or Tiffany's cat drew her into, Ernie from the phone call? Like, what can we do for ourselves, or veterans out there who find themselves struggling like that right now? What can they do to help themselves pull back into the present, into their surroundings, out of their heads?
Right. So the best thing that I want to say is that, Sarah, you win a gold star today because you are the perfect example of someone understand that you don't have to be a therapist to be therapeutic. Therapy is just healing, right? And you just connected with Tiffany in a human way. But what is actually happening when you're doing that is what we go to school to learn to do, is that PTSD trauma takes you back to then and there, right? Mm-hmm. And what you were doing was bringing her to here and now, where the threat does not exist. And so, Erin, what has to happen is that we have to have some way, like, whether it's your cat, whether it's your dog, whether it's the phone call from the school saying, yeah, you matter and you have something important to say to someone. It brings you out of that traumatic headspace and it puts you in the here and now where there is no threat. So your body can actually, your brain can wrap around the fact that there is no threat, even though your brain is telling you that there is one and everything. And so that's why therapy is effective if you can get the point that they need it. Many of the veterans have spoken to the fact that you fight while you are wounded. And you may see going to seek help as a sign of weakness or admitting defeat when it really is a sign of strength. Y'all, we aren't born knowing how to ask for help, even though we're born needing people. Remember that. We come into the world needing people. So we're not supposed to be fiercely independent. We're supposed to be interdependent because we need people to get through the world. So understanding that when you seek help, it is actually a sign of strength. And it is a skill that you have learned because we don't come here knowing how to help.
That's good.
I like how what you said about being interconnected. That's exactly what I feel right now, right? Like this is my brave. What you guys are doing, you volunteering your time in service, people helping people. I think that's the way to go. That's the key, right? Because as long as I'm in my head, that's a dangerous place to be. How could I substitute that? Thinking about others, being of service, helping another fellow veteran, getting that. Personally, those are some of the things that I try to do to stay out of self, right?
Absolutely.
And there's one thing I would like to share as well, is because I know we, and I thank you, Dr. Jan and Erin and everybody that's on This Is My Brave, and those tuning in. But I found something that we also deal with, especially as veterans, and for me, serving in multiple combat zones, is that when you're out, you can't cope by being too busy. And I found myself being engaged, trying to volunteer here, trying to work here, trying to do so many things that I overextend myself, and I found myself overextending myself at a time. And I had a good friend of mine who was another vet, and we have this thing where we can connect with each other. And his name is Monty Hay, and one day I pray that everyone will get to know him and hear his story. But we have this thing where we says, it's okay to go into the corner. Now, I know we talk about going to get help, but sometimes you do need to go into the corner. And we start thinking about like the greatest of the greats. When we think about the Muhammad Ali's or whatever great people they are, but they are great because at times, even during the fight, they have to go to the corner. They got to go somewhere and be quiet for a minute and let people pour back into them and speak back into them. Because when you're just giving, you'll find yourself till you don't have anything to give. And then that's when we get to them dark spots in our life. So we also get to learn that it's okay to go to the corner, and the corner could be going to get help. The corner could just be going and just spending some time with somebody, or going and doing something that you probably forgot that you used to love to do. But it's okay to go to the corner.
Great. Tiffany, do you still have cats?
I still have my same cat. She's still with me.
Oh, what's your cat's name?
Cammy.
Nice. Yeah.
She's still a very needy cat and wants attention all of the time, which is probably a good thing for me.
Yeah. So, Bethany, you have your service dog with you, and I know you just recently came out of training. So tell us a little bit about Fiona and how you and she work together.
Okay, so this is Fiona. I got her from Hero Dogs, which is an organization in Maryland. They train service dogs for veterans and first responders. So we had about 2 weeks of in-person training where I lived on site and we worked together. And then now, we're still training together. We're partnered together. But we have training once a week for the next 6 months. But Fiona, she has been trained to recognize a lot of my stress cues. So if you see her nudging me, it's because I'm, have really heavy sighs, or I'm fidgeting with my hands. And she's also trained, I have a medication timer, which she's been trained to alert to and lead me to that, to take my medications. But she's just, she's a big help. I feel like I've needed her for a long time, and she's a real blessing. So I'm very fortunate to have Fiona in my life. She's a gift.
Well, I learned something recently that Tanja also has recently gotten a dog for emotional support. Tanja, can you tell us about your dog and the program where you got that dog?
Yeah, so this is kind of cool. So this is Mitzi, and she's the love of my life. And I have a dog in my house. That right there is a miracle. So I have been working in prisons with veterans and people that are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated at Angola, which is one of the biggest prisons in the country. And they have an amazing program called the Pause Project, where they provide service animals for vets all across the country. And so they have a waiting list, but because I they kind of hook me up. And she is the love of my life. I take her into schools and presentations and places and spaces, and she knows my PTSD triggers, and it's just been an amazing thing. I'm so grateful for Angola and men who are incarcerated for real, and who are some of the best handlers, and who know what they're doing is for some of the most bravest men and those who serve our country. So I just love her, and I'm glad you guys are talking about service animals because, again, I've 3.5 months, and it's been amazing, and it has helped me out a whole lot. And my husband is grateful for this dog.
That's awesome. You know, the other thing I am really impressed with, all of you have touched on it to some degree, is the way that you feel this need to give back to your community. You've served your country already nobly and honorably, and now you're back in your communities and you're serving your country in a more community-based way, which I just think is really so impressive. So Ernie, will you tell me a little bit about what that means for you to give back and how that helps you in your journey?
For me, it was the therapy of giving back, building others, because I needed to build myself as well. So to others was always helping myself build. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about real quick about the present, being in the present, was I was so focused on what I used to be for 21 years, I didn't understand to build for the future. So that's why I always was stuck in the past. Until I realized I needed to close that chapter, and start a build for my future.
Yeah, I think that that is really just very powerful. It's a theme we're getting to, right? Like it's the, and I love how you said it, Dr. Jan, not the then and there, but the here and now. I love that. I just, we need to put a T together with that. is our theme. Yeah. So, I wonder if you all have any thoughts on, I know some of you work now, yay. And so if there's a veteran out there who has heard your message tonight, that reaching out and asking for help is the strongest thing that they can do if they're not managing things well for themselves right now, what would you recommend as resources that they could reach out to? Does anybody have any suggestions to start? Sarah, I know you work at the VA, so do you want to start with that?
Sure. Yeah, I worked at Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center in Aurora, Colorado, and now I work in the regional office that covers Utah, Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, and Utah. And I think I got all Oklahoma. Yeah. I've been heavily involved with a lot of different resources around mental and suicide prevention coordinators there. I would recommend highly that even just going to a facility and talking to other veterans that are there, that's a big way to connect with people. And then you can connect with resources on site. That's one thing that I loved about working at the hospital, is that all these veterans would come for like an hour before and after veterans just to hang out with other fellow veterans. That camaraderie is so powerful for our recovery in any situation. So during COVID, I'm sure that was devastating for a lot of people not have that sense of community, especially in the veterans community, older generation veteran community specifically, because I know that the higher rates of suicide among veterans are actually over the age of 60. There are veterans that don't seek help. They don't have resources because they are in rural parts of America. And that's why I identified that at the beginning of my talk, was that there are stigmas in place around veterans for a specific reason. And so really just reaching out to other veterans, being comfortable with sharing your story, absolutely. And then there's a plethora of resources and veteran service organizations on every corner, and we all have each other's back for mental health services. And yeah, so it's all around you. You just got to ask. It's hard to ask. It's very vulnerable, but you know, the power of vulnerability is that there's so much opportunity for connection in that moment.
And can I add something? The other
Sure.
thing right now, evidence-based is, peer support specialists, using our lived experience. And, as veterans, we all know, that is going to leave no man behind. And, if you don't work with the VA, find out, what's the certification to become a certified peer support specialist, where you can use your lived experience and get compensated, which is the just caveat, but the real deal is just, sharing it in your community, because there are so people outside of the space, even just not vets, but just regular people who are going through so much with mental health and addiction and things of that nature. And there's so many vets that are incarcerated and that are homeless. So there's so many opportunities for us to serve, and having that lived experience and, maybe thinking about a certified peer support specialist, which I am, is really, really, really cool. And a lot of people are looking for folks like us, because we have that lived experience, and because we're veterans and we know how to show up on time, and we know how to do teamwork, we know how to work together, and we're mission minded. So we're a hot commodity. I'm just saying.
Elias, you just put in a note in the chat. You want to tell us what you shared with everybody there?
Sure. So part of my story was I utilized the Veterans Crisis Line, and back when I used it, it was a 1-800 number. They give out little cards. You have to look it up, but they passed a bill to make it a 988 number now. So all you got to do is press 988, just like you would 911, and then press 1 for the Veteran Crisis Line. So it's that simple. They'll tag you up with somebody that'll point you in the right direction and get an assessment for the needs. You could always go to the emergency department, right? If that's a first stop, for me, for overall safety, especially at the VA. You could always stop there. And other than that, I think, just being a veteran, everybody on the panel, and everybody here being there for another veteran, and doing what you guys are doing right now by example is a way, right, to get the word out there and help. And I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. And appreciate all your stories, and it feels great to be up here with you guys.
Elias, I know you said that picking up that phone felt like the 1,000 pounds. So I just wonder, you didn't really say, maybe you did it, maybe I just got stuck on that. But
I did.
After the 1,000 pounds, what did it feel like for you inside when you made that contact and you had you started with that support? Like, what was that after the 1,000 pounds, which was probably really hard, obviously? Then what was the other side of that?
Well, I realize now that the 1,000 pounds was actually my pride and ego, right? And once I got past that part, it was acceptance. It was final acceptance, and just letting that pride and ego go, accepting the facts that were in front of me, and deciding to do something about it at that point. So it was a big relief, huge relief. I didn't have to carry that weight on my shoulders anymore. I said, yep, you know what? I'm gonna get me some help. I'm done with this. I'm done living like this. And that's part of, like, I wish I would have did this years ago. I wish I would have did this while I was in the service. I had opportunities. It's not like they just leave us hanging, right? And like, oh, you guys are on your own. Welcome back. No, we have resources laid out in front of us, redeployment phases, right? We have that choice, and I didn't take that choice. I was too big for that choice. My pride and ego didn't let me take that choice, that option. I continued to beat my own chest and, run uphill, and I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to do that at all. And I think look, in hindsight, it was just, I put myself through a lot more than what I really needed to. And I encourage everybody, you don't have to wait till you're hopeless and helpless and hit rock bottom, and you don't have to let it to get to that point. You could reach out and say something at any time. You could get help. There's a lot of people here that'll reach a hand out and even give you an ear, right? But I wish I would have done this a long time ago. That backpack got filled and it exploded. It burst. And what a mess it was. But hopefully, you guys don't have to wait till that time, and take some action a lot sooner, and maybe that'll help you out.
So we have a question from the audience, and yes, hearts all around for that, Elias. Thank you. So Nicole from the audience sent in the chat, and she was asking this question to those of you who referenced being in a really dark place and feeling hopeless. So Tiffany, Bethany, I'm sure many of you can speak to this. But if somebody is a friend or a family member to someone who's expressing those thoughts, how would you recommend supporting that person, or, tending to that person in that moment? I know we heard Sarah's version of what she offered you, Tiffany. And maybe you could just tell us, Tiffany, what your friends were doing before Sarah got there that wasn't really working. Maybe that's helpful to know. Like, what wasn't going right there? What was happening there? And this is probably obviously not to, throw shade at your friends. They were probably doing the best they could with what they had, right? But where was it not hitting the mark for you?
So this is a while ago. So memory. What I can remember is that it was a lot of like, oh, we're here for you. We love you. You need to be here. You need to stay here. You need to continue doing things. And the problem is that I can't believe that at all. I don't believe those words because I'm too far gone in my head to connect. I can't connect to those words and believe them. Yeah, I need to know that I'm loved, but you need to find a way to bring me back to the current moment. Because when I'm gone, I can't accept anything. I can't. My brain is so far gone that no matter how much you say you love me, I don't believe it. So bring me back to the moment, checking in. Okay, when did you get yourself a shower? When was the last time you ate? What was the last thing you drank? And coffee doesn't count as food. Even though I do that first thing in the morning, But that's what really helped me come back. And it's hard, and it's a process, and it takes a lot of time to feel better. And it's not going to always be good. I'm actually going through a low right now. And that's okay. Just don't let the lows win. There are a lot of people around who want you around.
Yes.
Sure.
I want you around, Tiffany.
For real.
We have some more storytelling to do.
And I want to dress.
Right. I was going to say, sis, the dress. Dress.
I'm cash shopping you now. Now.
You got to design the next man suit here, and maybe we can get some new modeling going for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, it's just that as a family, we can just feel so helpless and impotent because we don't know what to do. But a lot of times just being present, because I can tell you right now, those words, you don't have words to stop that pain.
Yeah.
And so Sarah just met you where you were. Like, just meet me where I am and be present with me. You don't have to fix anything because you don't have the power to. Right. And so I think that's one of the best things, just letting them know that somebody is there and being a presence and not overstimulating, not talking and saying things. And as we said, your friends were doing the best they could with what they had. So they were well-intentioned and ill-informed, and that is many of us. That's many of us. We don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. And we can't connect to the experience, right? We can't connect. I can't connect to military life. I can only be there by what you tell me. And that's, if I have the ability to enter the other, then as soon as you start to tell me about your pain, you cut it in half.
Yeah.
You know?
One more thing I
You
want to
have that
add.
ability. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's all right. We're vibing. It's okay.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Dr.
Yeah.
Laughinghouse. One thing that I think is imperative in these situations when you're showing up for other people is you have to be okay with being uncomfortable and in that unknown space.
Yeah.
That is so hard for people, and that's something we're taught as young children. Like, oh, you're sad, you're upset, or you're having all these big feelings. Let's go get ice cream, and we'll stop. No more. We don't
Stop
need
it.
your feelings. Just shut that down.
Right.
So we're not taught to actually be present with our emotions and what we're feeling. And so being okay with your experience in response to somebody else's, that takes some serious intention, and it's hard. It's hard for me sometimes.
Yeah.
And I know, and I want to acknowledge how incredibly challenging it can be for being in that space who are family members, because you have this emotional connection with them and you have this like desperation of like, please don't leave me. But also their experience is real. It's totally real. And that's what they need acknowledged in that moment, is that what they're experiencing is real and valid, and it's okay.
Yeah.
If it changes, that's okay. If it doesn't change, that's okay. But I'm here.
It's
I'm
okay
here.
not to be okay. Absolutely.
Yes.
Right.
And using real words too.
Yeah.
And letting them name the pain. Now, Tanja
Yeah.
talks about this all the time. Give your pain a name. Talk about it. Right? Get it out there. It's just like the people who are so misguided and think that if you talk to kids about sex, they're going to have it. They're going to have it anyway. Give them the information so they can make informed decisions. So when I talk to people and they're sad, they're depressed, they're in a dark space, I ask them direct questions. Do you want to kill yourself? Do you hurt yourself? We don't put ideas in their head. The thoughts are already there.
Right.
And by my being willing to walk through that door, lots of times people are relieved that they can just talk about it. Because a lot of the times, and I can't remember whether it was Ernie or Elias that talked about being in your head is a bad neighborhood to be in, right? A lot of those things die at the light of exposure. If you can just get it out there, then that weed doesn't continue to grow unchecked.
Absolutely.
So we have to be straight with people. And I'm not afraid to say, but do you want to die? We have to be straight. We have to use real words. We don't have to pity pat all around it. I'm telling you, those thoughts enter our mind. And we have to be okay to let people talk about it and to meet them where they are, to name their pain, to be present with them, and to walk them through it. Because what happens is they can get to the other side. And that is the wonderful thing. Now, everybody has a different path, but you're all on one journey of recovery. And it's beautiful. And I thank you for sharing your stories, because you all have taught me so much.
So Greg had a question for you, Dr. Jan, and for the panel. So go ahead, Greg.
All right, I think she almost just answered it, that one.
Oh.
So while serving, and I don't know others, I heard Elias talk about some things that when you're in, you're taught a lot. And so while I was in, I was what we call a SACO, which is a substance abuse control officer, and we also went through for suicide awareness, and that there were some telltale signs that they will tell you, and then you will ask those hard questions. You will ask them straight up, are you gonna hurt? Are you thinking about killing yourself or hurting somebody else? And whatever it is, you can ask those questions. But the question that I have is that now, as being out, is not so much as in, although suicide is I would say a result, or it can be a result of what they may be going with. But when it comes to mental health, like even from PTSD, are there any like telltale signs that ourselves, the other people can see it, because if that person, like Bethany said, or if you're so far gone mentally and you can't even remember to call 988, is there signs that family members or friends can be able to say, this person just ain't been themselves lately? Can you speak to that? Just because I don't know. I know, like suicide, they can tell you, like, all right, are they giving away their prized possessions or certain things like that? But when it comes to mental health, that you see someone out there in the streets, time to talk about it, like you're in the field, you see somebody. What are the signs to say, well, this person is like not mentally here by someone just acting out?
Right. So a lot of things, that's a good question. So a lot of things that deal with mental health, what you want to remember is they affect they affect mood, behavior, and emotion. Mood, behavior, and emotion. So when you begin to see changes that are uncharacteristic, or if moods are very what we call labile, they go back and forth, or if they appear inappropriate for the setting. If people can't engage in activities of daily living, if they can't groom themselves, if they don't eat, if they don't have interest in the things that usually make them happy, if they are, very moody or have angry outbursts with regard to something like specifically like PTSD, if they're having nightmares, if they have anxiety, if they appear to be having flashbacks or intrusive thoughts that seem uncontrollable, that is a time to seek help. It's not that we don't have blues, right? That we don't have the blues, or that we don't get into spaces where we are anxious, or that might be very appropriate and just a part of life. But when it is interfering with the things that you do daily and the things that are healthy to keep you connected to others and to things that you love, that is when you do one thing, and it's 4 words: reach out, seek help.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jan. I really appreciate that, because
I hope I answered your question.
You did answer my question, and it's something that I just wanted to be heard from a professional or in that, because we have family members, and like I said, me myself, I know I have family members and friends that are going to be watching this, and I always think about and I love my police department and all of that, but most of the time, police, they don't prevent, they show up after something has happened. It's not in that being able to help someone before it gets too far down. And if we can get ahead of it a little bit, just a little bit, it probably can keep us from getting to the lows. And we're like, one of our family members and friends, and those like the 5 that showed up and forced to be there, we want them to at least, hey, you know what? Now you know that, hey, these are some things you can look for. But even in those, hey, just there are people that can really help, and they can help you understand how to engage with that person. So thank you.
One of the biggest resources I want to talk about, Dr. Laughinghouse, and everybody listening, definitely seek out mental health first aid training. It's free everywhere. That is how I started my path in this mental health dynamic, and that was after I met Tiffany. So I didn't have that training until after I had met her, but do the training. They have ones that are focused on adults, children, veterans. They're everywhere, and it's such an amazing program. And there's other levels of training that you can go through, but that is like the hardcore, most proactive thing you can do is educate yourself, so that way you can respond.
Yeah, and there's also Safe Talk. There's Assist. Yeah, they're just really, really, really good. And so there are so many things that family members and friends can get in, can find. And look, let me just say this, we hear a lot in the news when we hear of all the stuff going on. And a lot of times people said, I saw the signs. And I think that was kind of maybe what Greg was alluding to. But, Dr. Laughinghouse, I think we used to always say, if you got it, you can spot it. And so it's really making sure that in mental health first aid will tell you that having those tools in your toolbox, having those resources, especially if you have a loved one or a friend who is a vet or anyone at risk, for suicide, go ahead and get that stuff in your phone. I mean, there's so many different apps you can get here in your phone. Even if you do have PTSD, there's an app for that. Just so many things for caregivers. There's an app for that. And so, get that in the ready. We're military folks, get in the ready, because if we need it, we got it. If we don't, it's okay. It's like having a tool. I have tools in my closet. Maybe I might use once a year, but at least I know I have it at the ready. And so it's just things like that. It's just practical things that we can do. And at the end of the day, I think Sarah said that thing. She broke that thing down. When that girl said she went down there and she sat down with her, I'm like, see, who trained her? She did that. I was like, okay. And watching the best training session. And when she said, can everybody clear out the room, girl? I was like, I like her. And then when she said, I'm just going to sit here, and sometimes, you just got to sit in people's shit. And I know that's real, or, just lay on the side of the bed with them while, while they're like, what, I think I could take a nap, but I need you to stay here, and just laying there with them. It's those practical things. And so she broke it down on that. She really did. And those are things that we can tell all loved ones and family and friends on, what to do, and just getting involved in so many of those amazing programs that NAMI has, and, just other places. It's just gonna be a game changer, I believe.
I just want to slip something in because it's on my mind to say, people typically associate PTSD with combat veterans, right? Because they believe that in order to have PTSD, there has to be something violent. But we know better now, and we understand that you can either experience it or you can witness it, and it does not have to be something violent. It has to be something that is traumatizing. And if it's chronic over time, it's going to change your brain, and it is going to affect your health, and it's going to interrupt the way that you navigate relationships and move through the world. So I just want to make sure that if somebody out there is disqualified, or I couldn't have PTSD, even though you're a service member, I just want to say you could let somebody else talk to you about it. Don't disqualify yourself because you didn't see combat, because there are things that you did see. You lost somebody got injured, that affects you very deeply. And because you have a wound that's physical, you're discounting yourself. And so I just want to put that.
Survivor's guilt is a very real thing.
Definitely.
Friends, this has been really an amazing conversation, an amazing evening. I feel like we could stay here for another hour. So we may have to have an encore presentation with a second round of discussions, because each of you brings such wisdom and support. And I want to tell you again, I'm grateful for your stepping forward, to be brave, to share your stories, to be a source of hope and inspiration for others out there. Today is November 10th. Don't want to forget it's the Marine Corps birthday, but also we are on the eve of Veterans Day. And so I just can't think of a better way to move into that day. And I'm just going to be reflecting on all of this tomorrow, and remembering all of you and the stories that you've shared. And so I am really so appreciative of this time that we've had together. Thank you all so much for being here with us in this space. And let's figure out a time when we can do it all again, a take two on this. I think that would be amazing. Dr. Jan, thank you so much for being here as our mental health professional. So helpful. I got to write down all your catchphrases there. Keep them in my back pocket. So, and for all of you who tuned in tonight, thank you so much for sticking with us all the way to an hour 45 on this event. So it's been wonderful having you all. Thank you all for coming, and have a wonderful evening.